So I want to ask you a question, and I want you to really think about this in your life and in your personal experiences. And this question is, who are the people that tend to get chased the most in dating and relationships, or who ends up getting people pleased the most? Is it the type of person who is overly accommodating in love and in relationships? Or is it the type of person that really holds their own boundaries and is not afraid to say no to other people, is not afraid to set a boundary, communicate a need, and really put their foot down around different things that don't feel good for them? And what you'll see if you're willing to look and consider is that the people who are too accommodating in love end up being the people who do not get their needs met, do not get their boundaries heard, and end up feeling unseen, unheard, and disconnected from the people in their life in general, and especially in romantic relationships. And so being overly accommodating hurts relationships because overly accommodating generally means at the expense of the relationship to yourself. And in this video, I'm going to take you through who tends to get chased in relationships, why this happens, but also four major things that you can do starting today to practice changing this pattern. And the goal and the outcome here is not so that you end up in a position where, you have the strongest boundaries ever and you never let anyone in and you become guarded. That's not the goal. The goal is to put yourself where you are treating yourself equal to the needs and concerns of others. And this is a huge point of growth for anxious leaning attachment styles, whether it's anxious preoccupied, fearful avoidant with that anxious side that they have. This is a really important thing to change to really revolutionize your love life. And if you stick around until the end, of course, I'll keep the best one for last. So, what I want you to start by just recognizing is the people who get chased are the people with the boundaries, the people who aren't afraid to communicate their needs, the people who will let people know in their lives how they want to be treated and what they expect. And of course, we can have a variation of that where that's too extreme and somebody's too rigid with their needs and they're too rigid with their boundaries. And it becomes more of like a self oriented instead of this healthy interdependency, instead of this healthy give and exchange, give and receive. But at the end of the day, the people who end up being overly accommodating, they don't let people know in their lives how they want to be treated because they're constantly people pleasing, they're constantly repressing their own needs. And it really will affect your relationships. And the funny part is that we don't realize how impactful and how important it is to teach people in our lives how to treat us. And when we're not doing that, when we're not telling people what our needs are, when we're not telling people our true yeses and nos, it's actually a hidden point of emotional unavailability because we're connecting to others through a mask. We're not expressing our truth. And in fact, you'll actually see that anxious, preoccupied attachment styles really have this essence of emotional unavailability that takes place. They actually have a huge part of themselves. It's emotionally unavailable. So, five major things that are really important, or sorry, four major things that are really important to dig into here in terms of ending this pattern. Because I'm sure if you take a look at your own patterning, you'll see as an anxious leaning person that you probably, if you were to audit and really take a look at how overly accommodating you are, you'll see that there's an absence of balance in there. You'll see that, you're probably somebody who will go out of your way to make other people feel comfortable when that's at the expense of yourself. And the goal is to treat yourself equal to others. And I want you to give yourself a score here for a moment before we even dig into like what you can do about it. But I want you to give yourself a score here from 1 to 10. And I want you to ask yourself, how much from 1 to 10, how how frequently am I treating myself and my needs equal to other people in my life who I care about, or equal to other people in general? It could even be people you don't super care about because you're just, at a very superficial level with them in your life. And you'll probably find that you are constantly really abandoning your own needs, really going against yourself to try to people please others. And this has an impact on your self-esteem. You are not giving the information that you need for people in your life to know what's okay with you and what's not, to truly see you, to truly understand you. And there's this hidden guardedness that exists there beneath the surface. So a few things that we can do differently, right? Four things that we can really do differently. Number one, you have to, in order to express and communicate your standards, learn what your personal standards are. Okay. So, what is okay for you in relationships and not okay? What are your boundaries in relationships? So, we have to really take a look and we have to learn to just understand like what our domain is. And a lot of anxious preoccupied attachment styles don't know this, right? Like haven't taken the time to do this because often your adaptive strategy in childhood is to people please other people. So I want you to sit and I want you to really think like, what type of relationship do I want to have? What types of people do I want to surround myself with? What would be key qualities or characteristics I would look for in friendships and relationships? What are my non negotiables? What are the things that are absolutely not okay for me to put up with in relationships? And you can do this like for your romantic relationships, but you can also do this for your friendships, your family relationships. And by asking yourself these questions, you are developing your standards. You are figuring out what your standards are in relationships. Number two, you then have to vet people when you first get to know them. I think that we sometimes think that when we're first getting to know somebody, we just have to win them over. A lot of anxious individuals think I just have to win this person over and get them to like me and build the bond in the relationship. You have a massive duty and responsibility to yourself if you want to surround yourself with the types of people that you're looking for in your life to actually vet people. And this means you have to ask them questions to get to know if they are going to be up to your standards. I mean, dating, especially, romantic relationships, because they really rub off on us so much. Dating, ideally, we kind of go through like this extended job interview process with people. And of course, we have to make sure that there's chemistry and connection and we have to like be able to go with the flow. But there should be on every date maybe 5 to 10% of sort of a job interview part of it. Really, like there should be 5 to 10% of every date. Maybe you take 10 minutes of the date and you set aside to just ask one or two questions that you need the answer to. An example of this, right, would be if something's really important to you in terms of like ambition, right? Like let's say you really want to, maybe you're a really ambitious person, you're always trying to grow yourself and you want to date somebody who's like-minded. And I don't mean that they have to be super successful. Maybe you just want somebody who's always willing to grow and wants to talk through things too if there's a problem. Maybe those are two characteristics that are important to you. You can't wait until you're in a committed relationship to guess and to see if that person is going to express those traits and qualities. You have to ask that person, hey, maybe on date number 3 or 4, you ask that person, do you find yourself to be the type of person that wants to grow? And if so, like, what kind of things do you do around that? And you might ask that question to get to know that answer because you're taking that information in to see if that person expresses those qualities that you're looking for in a romantic partnership. And the goal is not to like have somebody batting 100, right? Nobody's going to have every quality and characteristic that you want in exact form. But the goal is that you can actually see like, is this person a good fit for me in the vast majority of ways? And if there's places where we may have differences, are those pretty solvable problems? And you won't know unless every single date, starting after the first 2 dates, I would say, like the first 1 or 2 dates, you can just see if there's chemistry, connection, are things flowing. But really, by date number 3, you want to be asking these questions. You want to be having like a little conversation, 1 or 2 questions per date that you need to know to see if that person's a match for your standards. This is a very important process as an anxious, preoccupied person. And it will allow you to stop being so accommodating in love. It will allow you to accommodate yourself and your own needs instead of it always being this one-way street. So those are our first 2 things we have to do. We have to know our standards and we have to actually vet according to our standards. Then we have to express our needs and we have to express our boundaries. And this means that if you have a standard, so let's say for you, a standard is that you really want to date somebody who's always willing to work through conflict or challenges. And maybe you're on date number 12. Maybe you've been dating for, a couple months now and seeing each other quite frequently. And there's an issue because, there's generally going to be little touch points or little challenges we face as we get to know people more and more, especially in a more intimate relationship. And you have a duty to yourself if you want to make sure that this person is going to keep showing up and pouring into you the way that you pour into other people. You have a duty to yourself to tell the person, let's say that you want to work through things and the person's stonewalling. You have a duty to say, hey, we talked earlier in the relationship and I asked you, are you the type of person who wants to work through things? And you said yes. And this would be a really good time to do that. And it's really meaningful to me. If you need a second to cool off or you're frustrated, I can respect that. But I really want to hold you to the standard of let's work through it. Let's hash it out. Let's have this discussion. And that's you supporting what your needs and your boundaries are. And that's you backing your standards indirectly. And the more you do this, you're going to see that by doing this in a healthy, assertive way, not through anger, not through spite or frustration like that, but by doing this in a healthy, assertive way and by backing yourself with your needs, your boundaries, your standards, vetting these things, knowing these things, you're going to see that people start chasing you instead of you feeling like you were always chasing after other people. The people pleasing cycle will keep you in chase mode. And this is a hugely important thing to break as an anxious, preoccupied attachment style. And honestly, it's a hugely important thing to break if you're looking to improve your self esteem, because we always diminish ourselves when we're always chasing and people pleasing. And there has to be this equality. You don't want everybody to only chase you, but you want to have a give and exchange in healthy interdependent relationships. And this is how securely attached people operate. So, I hope this makes sense. It's such an important topic, honestly. And if you want to do a much deeper dive into this, I actually have a course that you can check out for free for 7 days called How to Master the Dating Stage of Relationships. It has all the exercises to help you determine your standards, to know your boundaries, to know your needs. It gives you the timeline for when to express them. It gives you different suggestions for how to express these things and have these conversations on dates so that you can properly vet. And you'll see this is what breaks that cycle and breaks that pattern of always being the people pleaser, always being a chaser. And then often as a result of that, feeling left, let down or frustrated as a result. So anyways, I hope this makes a whole lot of sense. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for being here. Let me know questions you have in the comments down below. Are you the chaser? If so, what are some of your patterns in that process? And what would you like to see yourself do differently? I would love to hear from you. And I can't wait to see you in the next video. If you subscribe, you will see it tomorrow. Thanks so much for watching.